Yung first question ko is, siguro, I read from your, online na mga, snippets lang about yourself. You started with Vanilla Times, is that right?
No, Vanilla Times was in 1999.
Was in 1999, okay. So how did you start?
I started in the provinces.
Sa Bacolod po.
Became a correspondent swimmer by John's France Press, the Manila Chronicle. So this was 85. So previous to 84, all my knowledge of Mendiola was
as an activist.
After that, tsaka na lang, when I went to Manila and started in
87. When you started in 87, with
I worked with the Evening Star, that's the evening paper of the Philippine Star that day.
Evening paper of the Philippine Star.
I started as senior desk man, and then became city editor. But I'm one of those editors who always pocket, so hindi serve pa rin talaga. And then eventually the Daily Globe, then nag-rest na ako, and then came back sa Manila.
Sa Manila Times, medyo mas so hindi updated pala yung nasa online. Ma'am, so you were covering what type of news nung nasa Bacolod pa kayo? The usual, everything.
Well, since these were the 80s, that would have been, the bulk of that would have been social conflict, insurgency, strikes, Bata Negros, all that stuff.
Nung sa Philippine Star po kayo, sa evening news?
Well, I edited, but I covered it. I was one of those who covered the food, so I covered from time to time rallies in Mendiola. I think that was in 87 or 88, siguro nakita ko sila yan, and I was actually standing there and seeing people who were in UP while I was in UP, marching as student leaders, in the 80s, late 80s and that.
Ano yung course nila sa UP? Ano po yung course nila sa UP?
AD Journal. I never finished. I dropped out second.
Ma'am, yun nga, I understand na activist din po kayo, and then, yun nga, sinabi niyo sa akin yan, journalist. So, medyo may overlap po yung experience niyo. But siguro yung bulk po, ma'am, I would be more interested on your work as a journalist. So, sinabi ma'am, you covered the coup and yung sinalo yan. Naalala niyo pa ba, ma'am, kung kailan kayo unang pumunta sa Mendiola? As an activist or as a journalist, or what was the
activist? Probably 81.
Ano po yung issue?
That was shortly after that. That was right after Education Act yan. Tapos
after Education Act.
Certainly, of course, during the Long March, the 84 last year's was the Long March yun. Lakbayan tawag ko.
Lakbayan,
Long March tawag mo.
Lakbayan.
Saan po nag-originate itong Long March?
It was practically a long march, It came from what? As far as some people came from Bicol, some from Quezon, at least. And I don't know, mas familiar ako sa South kaysa sa Central. That's why it was called Long March. It was literally a long march. It took a week, more than a week.
And then yung culmination sa Mendiola?
I think sana sumama na. Sumama na ako sa Batangas.
This was shortly what you said after yung sa Education Act.
This was now. The Long March would have been 84 na yan.
84.
Ninoy na yan, mga ano na yan, That was even before Ninoy, and then after Ninoy, tuloy-tuloy yan, yung series yan, ng mga long marches na tinatawag. So this was the time na sila Kakani, na sila Ben Cervantes, binabomba ng kanyon. Naalala ko na dati na, I don't know which, where my dad saw a photo, hindi na my sister na ako, wala akong kopya noon, but like, I began to sabi ni my dad saw us. Bomba, nagtubig. So, ganun lang. You were students, you marched, there were marshals, sometimes we commanded some marches depending on kung saan yun. There were, of course, the lightning rounds that happened, which meant na mas maliit to, biglaan na lang. This was mostly more underground.
Yung mga lightning rounds. Tapos nung sinabi nyo, na-cover nyo din yung Mendiola nung ano kayo ng Evening News ng Philippine Star. Yung mga protest doon. Naalala nyo ba yung...
Evening Star?
Po, Evening Star. Evening Star, sorry. Naalala nyo po yung first na kinover nyo na protest or demonstration in Mendiola?
I don't know what it was. Well, I remember... I think this was shortly after Cory, when nag-iinitan... I think by this time the peace talks had collapsed, and nag-iinitan na yung right and left, the bag of war. I do remember I saw Leanne, Rico Foss was from UP, was already an older UP activist when I was starting on the UP, and I was like, si Rico Foss pa rin yung nakikita ko ng Marta. And others, not very media, but at that time, sila so I can't even say them. So there were a lot of friends. At that time, nasa Villota kami.
Why were you given these assignments, ma'am? Were you a bit reporter?
No. I was an editor, but I was an editor who liked to write and who liked to watch things.
Okay.
And as long as, we were evening papers, so whatever I did in the days, my own business,
okay. So you personally went there to write about the protest. What's this? Of course, I'm interested lang kasi sabi mo nga parang dati you were an activist, so actively participating ka doon, and now parang you were merely there to observe and to write.
Yeah, I wasn't marching. That didn't mean that I didn't care.
Yeah.
Except that, you draw a line somewhere, you can march about major issues, you don't have to march for the ouster of the president.
Tapos ma'am, after nun, you covered a lot of the protest. Do you remember?
Not too many. I often edited. I direct the reporters who would cover it.
Did you come across the Mendiola massacre?
No, that was funny. That is interesting because when Mendiola massacre happened, I was working in what was a relatively very casual crisis management job, and I was ensconced in Manila Hotel at that time. Very nice show. And this was the time when you got disillusioned by a lot of things, but you were always being torn both ways, ayaw mo na sa ilang particular forms of struggle, and yet may malasakit ka, may pagtingin ka pa rin, malalim din sa mga, hindi lang sa mga natirang mga kasama, kundi yung sa mga, on the issues that actually fuel unrest. And I do remember crying. I watched the Mendiola massacre on TV, and I remember crying, and I was very mad. I wasn't too sure if I was mad at the government, which I was anyway, or if I was mad at myself. There was several years of this guilt thing going on. Did I abandon the struggle too soon? When before that, actually, the question was, did I stay too long, even when I had already, had my fill of doubts and questions? I At that time when Mendiola happened, the question shifted is did I abandon the struggle too soon? And what was I doing in this nice job? And it wasn't enough that I, give help to whoever came for my things. And I wasn't the only person that felt that way. I'd still go around with journalist friends, even if I was out of journalism at that point, for that, for those couple of years. And even the journalists, even those who actually covered it, the photographers and everything, who were previously participants in marches and other forms of struggle. That was a question that raged, in our minds. Kung nakita mo yan, maraming namatay, gano'n, tanong mo sa sarili mo, parang tama ba na umunto ka? Eventually, the doubts still outweighed everything else. And so, you went through other forms of struggle. You stuck to journalism, writing, still covering the issues, without actually participating directly in mass politics, for example. But that was a lot of those photographers, I mentioned. If you see the footage of Mendiola, you will see the photographers carrying the wounded and the dead. And that was, at that time, may debate yun. Photographer ka, kumukuha ka lang. But, there comes a point when, people, wala na. Kukuha ka, pero tutulong ka. So, I think Mendiola was for many, was one way of getting us to review again kung ano ba papel ng isang journalist sa Philippine. So, do we stand by and watch people get mowed down? We may not actually, go into the middle and try to stop whoever is shooting at them, but, you don't just shoot and as people bleed. So, yun medyo na, that was one incident where a media ethics issue was clarified. Mendiola Massacre showed that yes, you can step in and help, even if you're a journalist. We didn't want to advance actions. We didn't want to be participants, in political action. But we didn't want also to be tied up by what we call false objectivism and just stand by us, and look and profit from the deaths of others.
Ma'am, the protest that you covered, do you remember what happened in this protest? What you saw and what you witnessed? And
No, those protests relatively ended peacefully. I think I saw one that had, that was broken out, where you had students, being chased all over Maraita, although it wasn't particularly violent by the standards of Mendiola. But I think that was one of the last few rallies that we had appeared in, and then a couple of months after that assassination. So that was, and of course, I was there on the sidelines when they marched for Ariate.
For Leanne. So these are the protests that you remember. Ma'am, dun sa mga, yung to get your story, who did you interview or who did you talk to? I mean,
usually that's Leanne. Usually when Leanne was alive, that was usually Leanne. For a while, there would be Nat Santiago. I think it would be Leanne's Lapid, Lily, was also Indonesia Masa. She was for a long time part of that. The youth movement for protection. So marami. So, of course, kataning, kapepe, all this stuff. Mga pare, reason, kaya na.
Ma'am, paano po yung mga residents dun or bystander? Did you ever talk to them on...
Strangely, no. You focused really on the main protagonist, which would basically be the activists in the state. And the bystanders were bystanders. They either pull some... Well, when I was a student, I had, owners of stores and whatever pulling us in for safety. But basically, you did ask store owners what they thought. So, I don't know, maybe it should have been a good idea to ask them at that point.
Did you consider it an advantage that you were used to be member of same group that you're covering?
Yes and no. I've always been very critical with reporters' copy, but that made me doubly critical of my management. The knowledge that these were my former friends, and a lot of them were still my friends, and I remained my friends, made me wary of just taking down quotes. So, so probably many of my columns would actually be more critical, and I don't think anybody would mind that. But because I believed in a lot of the causes that was agrarian reform, human rights, poverty, etc. Selling down the country to foreigners, for that matter. But you're a journalist, and so ang pananaw ko nun is mas makakatulong ka sa isang cause kung isusulatin mo na matino yung iba-ibang angulo nito. Kumbaga, partly, one of the reasons why I got out, I got the solution and all that was because I felt people were talking too much among themselves and not talking enough to people who should have been the primary audience. So as a journalist, that's what we tried to do. And that meant that we took the good and the bad from everyone and presented this. It was
in writing your account of the protests or demonstrations, what story did you want to convey?
Actually,
was there a particular that you want to follow or to adhere to?
There's two things. There's covering the protest rally itself, and then there's writing about the issue.
About the issue.
That caused the protest rally. So, the protest rally is a story, but it's not the story.
The story. Okay.
So, there was a very clear line, sa amin. Hindi sapat na magsulat ka ng rally. Mas importante, mahalaga, magsulat ka kung ano ang mga issue. Roots of unrest. Mas mahalaga yun. Kasi only by doing that in a clear, in-depth manner would you actually be able to raise possible suggestions, resolutions.
So you try to, of course...
so basically, kung may nangyari, police report siya. Unless it's big enough that nagiging isang, isa na siyang tinatawag mo na fulcrum, isa na siyang perfect example of exactly what is wrong with the country. For what? Because, you had farmers dying, and these were farmers who were fighting for land to call their own. So, iba yun. Pero kung, let's say, 10 estudyante nahuli, medyo napukpok, o kung ano mo dyan, basically, that was a new story. Mas importante nun ang pagtalakay
ng issue.
At hindi mo nakikita yun sa Mendiola. Pumupunta ka dun sa Panayonan para makuha ka.
Hindi lang din sa...
you'd have people calling Mendiola stop the handwriting in Negros, but to actually give people a view of what the Hamilton was like, he went to Medford.
Ma'am, curious lang po ako, were there particular stories that you've written na hindi po na-print? Ma'am, kasi sabi
About
niyo,
Mendiola?
about Mendiola
issues
protest,
that
or
were
the
brought.
issue na kinary nila dun sa protest sa Mendiola. Kasi
No, this was after martial law, so more or less the stories that we. I don't know that a lot of Mendiola stories were killed, or protest stories for that matter, or even social issues.
Sa newspaper po, saan sila naglalang? Saan page po sila
Sa
buhay?
fan page, or sa nation page, or sa provincial page. Usually, But I wasn't just a reporter, so I had some leeway in
Kasi you're
in
also the
muscling,
editor.
I could muscle and fight for my stories better, I guess, than a reporter could. But I've always told reporters, and this is not so much about protest rally stories, because that normally comes out. Kahit maliit, lalabas yan. Kahit litrato, lalabas yan. But in talking about the social issues that fuel the rallies, I've always believed that depende din minsan sa skills, naturuan ng reporters, paano kumuha ng datos, paano magpresenta ng isang mas well-rounded na storya na hindi lang from start to finish, slogan after slogan, kundi kwento ng mga buhay ng mga tao. And I think to a large extent, sure, there will have been instances siguro when there was pressure from government officials, but I think largely then, it's harder. I've always told reporters, and I told them that during those times, that it's harder to kill a well-written story than a lousy story. Always. Any editor. Of course, some editors have actually used the lousy word as an excuse for not coming out with a story, but you can only do that once. You cannot do it several times. Especially not if, a reporter's story stands on itself. Malalaman. Yeah. Hello?
Ma'am, social movement actors, especially certain groups carrying very, very specific issues, they usually complain that they don't get enough coverage from the press or from media. Do you remember any protest in Mendiola that was not covered by the press but should have been?
No.
Or
They
particular
say,
issue?
Did they point to any particular?
No.
I don't think so. It's not, there's no such thing as a perfect victory, Pero, hey, carp passing Congress, it's very flawed, and, you have landowners struggling from day one to roll back the gains, but the fact that, a lot of the reforms could actually be credited to the activists that march on Villota says something about, the kind of society and media that they were with. Because if media was as, cold towards them as they would claim, hindi lumabas yung mga problema na yan. And I don't think so. I really don't think so, because probably for very few establishment medias, if we're talking Manila Philippine, that's a given. Although I've actually seen some coverages in Manila Philippine. So no, I don't think. I think what the problem is a sustained in-depth and coverage of the issues. Yun siguro, pwedeng masabing medyo kulang yan. Una, mas mahirap kasi para sa isang, if you're a beat reporter, if you're a journalist with 5 deadlines to meet in a day, different stories, mas mahirap sa yung magpalalim ng isang story. Kukunti lang naman ang mga pahayagan na merong resources and the will, for that matter, to go really into this in-depth journalistic thing. So yun, posible yun. Pero I don't think it's because media doesn't care. But also because sa totoo lang, minsan kasi, when we're asked to talk to NGOs and people's organizations as to how they can better approach media, we always tell them that, look at it this way, slogans will never be enough. Nakakalimutan yung buhay ng tao yan. We don't see people's stories coming from them. Unless there's a disaster somewhere, then you have people's stories. But if they talked about land reform, I'd rather see them giving me, for example, a story about a farmer than a 3-page statement filled with rants. Rants are okay, but you don't give me rants only.
What about if the protest or the issue that they're carrying is not within the news cycle anymore? Does that ever happen?
Yun na lang yung sustain. Nasa kanila rin kung paano ka mag-ano ng news cycle. Hindi naman kami gumagawa ng balita eh. Sa totoo lang, pwede kaming mag-sustain yan, pwede kaming magkalkal yan. Sinabi ko nga, kahit kami, na palagi namin nagsusulat ng mga ganun pa rin mga stories, hirap rin ang minsan because, you have small papers with very poor logistics. You have journalists who don't even get paid the minimum wage. Do you really expect them to have the skills, much less the willpower to actually pursue? But some journalists do. The provinces, they actually do. So it's give and take. You win some, you lose some. But I don't think that media has ever abandoned
An issue.
people's organizations or issues.
Ma'am, you remember any stories about the Mendiola protest in Mendiola that you've ever edited or siguro sa graphic or when you were working with
Sa graphic na?
Graphic. The newspapers you worked with, Manila Times, sa Evening Star, na hindi po kayo nagsulat, inedit ninyo.
Yeah. Pero hindi nga to yung malalaki. Kasi pag malaki, natutugits na rin gawin. Lian dies. You want to be there. I think the first anniversary of Mendiola, yung mga ganun, mga Mendiola massacre anniversaries or Escalante massacre anniversaries na magmamarch sa Mendiola. Nandun kami. Minsan, binibigay namin yung mail sa reporters, but, we contribute to it. So, yeah, and more or less, yung mga ordinary na mga rallies. As I said, we used to treat them as 5-page, 5-paragraph stories, unless, mas malaki palagi yung treatment namin kasi sa
issue. Okay. So, ma'am, hindi niyo na maalala kung ano mga protest na to, yung mga issues na
kasi sunod-sunod naman yan, human rights, killings, sino bang sunod kali yan? Si Olalia. Olalia. Pag, ang hirap sa Mendiola kasi, if you're going to talk about Mendiola kasi, then you'll be forced to focus on the big ones. Kasi it was rally after rally after rally. It's rally after rally after rally, and it's very hard to find yung crest, except yung certain, kumbaga, makapagbagdamdami yung nangyayari dyan, o makarumalduman yung nangyayari. I doubt if you ask, unless the photographers to whom a lot of funny things happen while covering these things, nabubugbog kasama yan, nagdadapa na I doubt if any journalist actually will have very clear memories of every single story
that they covered. So it's mostly itong sinasabi ko, mga big, the big ones. How would you assess the coverage of protests in Mendiola now? Like for example, recently yung anniversary ng.
Let's put it this way. Media doesn't exist in a vacuum. Much as paminsan-minsan, nagbubuhat kami ng bangko, taga-akalang kami ay napakahalagang parte ng lipunan. Mahalaga nga naman kami. A lot of people simply this false notion of a mystical role media plays. Actually, malaking papel namin, pero reflection lang kami. Kung hindi masyadong nagbibigyan o ng napakamalaking halaga ang nangyayari sa Mendiola ngayon, for example, posible dahil hindi rin masyadong napakalaki ang numero ng tao na pupunta sa Mendiola. At kung pupunta tayo sa kung bakit hindi napakalaki ang numero ng tao na pupunta tayo na yun sa state of the country, which is pretty topsy-turvy as it is, very, very fluid, everybody angry, but nobody really knowing, what we do about this thing. So yun. Hindi pa dahil sa walang pakialam ang media. Kino-cover pa naman sila eh. Kaya lang, sa dami namin ng grupo at ang isang malawak na posisyon na hindi naman nagkakaisa sa maraming issue at strategies, then, you run after so many people. But, let's give credit to media. As a tour, Kabel, they will always have their say. They're always covered. Lisa, Ontiveros, maybe on, in another faction or whatever. They always get covered. It's not true that they don't.
They will always get covered.
They always get covered.
What about Mami?
Sumilao gets covered.
Even the pro-administration groups will get covered. Kasi you're saying
although somewhat in a more mocking manner. So totoo lang, tingnan mo. Basahin mo lahat ng mga lumalabas ng nagrarally dun sa welcome rotonda papunta ng Mendiola. Hindi ba tangking chick ang susulat minsan na ayaw nananawagan sila na, read between the lines and makikita mo naman. Or kulang na lang sabihin, sinusulat namin ito kayo, kailangan isulat namin ito kasi sila ngayon naman nakita sa Mendiola, pero, parang gano'n. Without, of course, overstepping the bounds of news importance. Media will always be instinctively for the opposition. Whether it's the militant opposition, the traditional opposition. So, kahit paano pa yan, ano pa man ang sabihin, may manood ang gobyerno, may pagkukulang ang media, totoo yan. Kahit sino nga. Ang reklamo nga masyadong ng pro-opposition ng media So, minsan gano'n, naiipit kami. Sasabihin ng gobyerno na wala kang ginawa kundi sumulusol ng mga destabilizers di umano. Sa kabila naman, sasabihin na napaka-apathetic ng media, hindi masyadong nakikinig sa daing ng mamaya. So, we do the best we can. There will always be a million demands on us. And you try to listen, but really just do what you need to do.
Ma'am, kasi sinabi nyo, yung social movement actors, dapat hindi lang sila ang tawag dito, dun sa mga slogans or mga rants nila. How do you think will they, in terms of strategies to attract media or...
It's not attracting media, but it's attracting the people. Sabi nga, ikaw, punta ka sa kalye, may nagsasabi sa megaphone makikinig ka ba? Isang katutak na ismo ang nakikinig mo. Wala ka naman kinalaman kung ano yung ismo na yan. Hindi naman nagpapaitindi sa'yo kung ano yung ismo. Ikaw titigil at nakikinig dyan. Maliban na lang kung talagang siguro may ZTE na galit ka o nakikinig ka. But otherwise, it's not just that they need to talk better to us media. They need to talk better to their audience, period. And I'm not saying bayan muna lang. I'm saying practically everybody in the opposition, including the traditional opposition. Masyado sila na-trap dun sa mga kahon nila. Yata marunong lumabas. Hindi lang yan. I'm talking sa lakas, sa bayan, whatever, kung ano man yan silang rejoice or whatever they call themselves.
You also had the NUJP, and sometimes
I'm director. I was chair.
And nagkakataon po ba na may protest action din kayong ginagawa?
May isang protest action kami sa Mendiola, sandali na, pero nakalaglag kami dun sa
What happens in those instances? Na parang media, i-cover niyo ba yung sarili niyo? Or do you ask friends, cover mo naman kami? Ano yung dynamics na nito?
I-cover talaga nila. They, one of the reasons why we're such a good country is because people care about our issues, because these are the same issues that directly affect them. So natural lo yan eh. Kung anong malapit sa sikmura mo, yun ang papansinin mo talaga. No? So, and also because iba-ibang forma na rin ng protest actions ginawa namin. Kapagpit kami sa seawall, nag-aral kami sa simbahan, meron kami lipad-lipad ng doves dun sa kasi kinikilala mo nga na ang media, hindi na naman isang lawak-lawak ng media there will be some of people, who will sit beside us in the forum and be with us when we're talking about media violence and all the things, but who are probably, rapidly pro somebody or another na hindi tama for a journalist, but you don't win all fights all at one time. So depende sa issue, malawak kasi yung issue. Wala naman siguro tatayo ng media para magsabi na hindi okay lang patayin ng iba namin kasamahan. So kahit anong gabi yan, talagang sasama yan. So, in that sense, it's an easier, Pero, the same, as as hindi kami naiiba society, when the NUJP starts campaigning for economic rights, bagamat na karamihan ng media gutom din, hindi lahat tatayo dyan. Dahil, takutan na yan. Takot na sa empleyado mo. Yung iba, feeling nila, nakukuha nila naman ang the balance of what they need for living somewhere else, and we won't even talk about that. So hindi. Yan, medyo, you do not expect the same big crowd that you will get when, say, you talk about, a crackdown on press freedom, pag-raid ng Tribune, o Manila Pen, kung ano na doon. Kahit Manila Pen, pati yung media. So, may mga issues that will draw a broader unity within a sector, and there are issues na magkakanya-kanya na yan. And, the trick really there is try to work together where you can work together and be dignified in your disagreements. Probably, I try to respect na hindi mo naman pwedeng pukpukin ng tao para lang mamulat. Hindi naman namumulat sa pukpukan ng tao. Maliban na estado na, kung siya ng estado, ibang sa akin niya baka mamulat. But you're an organization that deals with process and education, and convincing them is the way to do it, not coercing, however, in various ways.
Was there ma'am, kasi sinabi mo kanina, yung mga reporter nagko-cover yung pro-administration, sometimes in a mocking manner, yung nila. May instance ba kayo na yung coverage ng protest na inorganize nyo was portrayed in a different light, or yung pagkakasulat ng story was very disadvantageous or harmful even for the...
that I organized as a student activist, or the NUJP?
NUJP.
Wala masyado. Meron siguro there will be some columnists who will say that we disagree with a particular slang, and that's okay. I mean,
that's okay,
paano naman kami magde-defense ng freedom of expression kung hindi namin papayagan?
Ma'am, pero, I understand kasi, wala pa sa news. Nung naalala niyo po ba nung estudyante kayo?
Mahirap kasi, ilang dyaryo lang ba? Nung 80s na yun. Government, lang yun. Actually, they ignored us. Period.
They just ignored you.
They tried to ignore Ninoy's death and the bunch of how much, more the protest. But there were other ways. There were people. There were a lot of underground papers or mosquito press. There was a lot of media going on outside of the mainstream. That media which was put down to 3 or 2 at the time. And of course the government station. So no, they didn't really mock us. I mean, I think they were very scared to mock the protest. They would rather ignore it.
Then,
Kasi makarin, makakagalit dyan. So ignore it, just pretend it's not there was probably the safest thing.
Ma'am, what about yung mga, kasi I understand dati nagko-cover, may mga stringers na nagko-cover for like international newspapers. Would you say na yung pagkakasulat naman nila ng istorya ng protest nyo, it's fair or fair enough or...
Yeah, if you're talking about the protest that happened when I was a student activist, yeah, this was towards the end towards the end of the Marcos years then. So remember, he was weakening na. So lumalaki na rin naman talaga yung press conference. So yun ang sinasabi ko, hindi naman pwedeng maiwalay ang media. I mean, kung 10,000 tao, 5,000 tao dyan, baka, hindi ganun kalaki o hindi ka seryoso ang coverage. Pero pag 20, 50 mil ng nagmamarcha, kung ang ang dulo ng isang marcha ay hindi mo na makita, babaybayin mo ng ilang oras para lang maabot, siseryosohin talaga yan kahit sino ka. So that, ang media nagre-react lang naman talaga yan sa sitwasyon. Although in a lot of cases also, media waded in where angels fear to tread and took out the stories that allowed people to sit up and realize na may ganitong nangyayari sa mundo.
Ma'am, na-mention niyo po yung sa numbers na kunwari ganito kadami. So, anong klase o, what kind of protest merits coverage? Or, what I mean, in terms of,
ikaw lang pag dumaan ka sa dali at may 20 na tao, hindi mo talaga papansinin yun Pag 10,000 tao na yan, medyo, ano kaya yun? Pag 10,000 na yan, hihinto ka naman kahit paano, makikinig-kinig ka na, di ba? Pero hindi lang media, numbers matter. Whether you like it or not, numbers matter. And you don't reach a critical mass overnight. There's a lot of background work that goes into creating a critical mass. Not just among what we call the mass leaders, but among the organizers, among the different allied groups, many of whom may not exactly agree with each other all the time, but will work together at some point.
Ma'am, I only have one question. Looking back, would you have written your stories on the protest in Mendiola differently or the same way? Kasi sabi niyo kanina na alala ko, maganda rin na kinuha niyo yung bystanders, yung sentiments nila. Would you have written it or the same way? Or?
It's easy to say that in hindsight. But, at that point, kasi, one also of the aspect of being a journalist is, what's the most burning issue? What kind of writing will you do to allow a more dramatic, expression of an issue? And I'm sure, talking to the main protagonist will always be more dramatic. You can talk to the people who help. And I think a lot of it, after kung basahin yung Mendiola Massacre, you will probably see a lot of stories of people trying to make it. So yes, that happens. But you can only write so much, say this is a deadline for one thing. That's probably more realistic when you're talking about the bigger issue, when you're talking about war. You don't just talk with the two parties involved in a war. You talk with the peacemakers, you talk with people caught in conflict, you talk with, all shades of gray na yan. But in an instant, in a rally, nakafocus ka naman talaga. Lalo na kung nag-isa ka lang naman reporter.
Ay, ma'am, may isa po pala, sorry po. Ma'am, kasi yung sa TV, mga broadcasters, na alam ng mga tao na media sila, with the newspaper, yung photographer. Pero yung sa mga po namin, pag print sa print, tapos nagsusulat lang ganyan, alam ba nila na media kayo? Meron kayong press
Meron kayong press ID. When you're in a rally, you usually wear that. Kasi kahit naman lang for self-preservation, pag nagpupo ka, you want the police to see your iPhone. But also because if you're going to be asking questions from people who have already experienced oppression and harassment, you want to make it clear to them who you are. At nakailang huli na ang press ng intelligence na press.
Yun sana yung gusto namin.
The press man watches out there. Not because hindi pa dahil we think we're the marshals of the rallies, but because it's also our safety mechanism. Like, the last thing journalist organizations want is to have spies exploiting our profession, because then that would actually endanger a lot of us. So yun. And nagpapakilala ka naman. Usually pag nag-aano ka, unless na marami na kayo na talagang klaro isang grupo kayo ng journalist. Pero when you approach a person, it's still the same. You approach on a sidewalk or on the rally, papakilala ka manang, and it's usually that manang, ako po, sa ano po ako, gano'n, ang pwede ko yung interview, gano'n lang naman. So,
ano po yung reaction nila po, yung mga activists and yung mga baristers?
I'm still yet to see an activist who doesn't want to talk. Whether she's in various ways, kahit buhay niya, kahit, she doesn't have to talk in manifesto. Pero ang buhay, activist, kaya activist na yan, dahil malalim ang paniniwala, may passion yan for the cause, so naturally, magsasalita yan. Siguro ang mga tao natatakot magsalita, minsan yung nasa kalagitnaan ng gulo talaga sa countryside, yun medyo dahan-dahan, and nasa yun na rin na para hindi naman mapahamak yung mga news sources. But in rallies, everybody loves it.
Everybody loves it.
Ma'am, in closing, you've been an activist, you still participate in some causes, and also a journalist. What is achieved in going to Mendiola?
What is achieved in going to Mendiola? Oh, ala. I mean, let's not, and I'm not talking in a romantic point of view that this was Mendiola.
Yeah, based on your experience.
Mendiola now as a symbol of why go to Mendiola, because you cannot solve a problem without acknowledging it. And if a government refuses to acknowledge a problem, it is up to the people to force it to acknowledge the problem. The only way they do it is by going out there and confronting it. And if Mendiola is the bridge, that forces acknowledgement of the problem, so do it. People have to do it.
Thank you. On that note, thank you po. Thank you very much for your time.